Okay, we're getting ready to start the tour of the cave, Smallin War Cave, Civil War Cave. So I will not be doing any talking on this. We're going to let the tour guides do the talking. So we're getting ready to start it here in just a few minutes. I'm going to pause it and then start it back up when the tour actually starts.
I tied my own shoes.
We got some rules up here I got to go over because, well, it's just because we got rules. You know why we got rules? Just everybody kind of knows what to expect. All right. Tour length's about an hour, half-mile walk, no stairs all the way there and back. Stay on your trails, remain with the group. Please use the handrails, stay on the walkways. The walkways are the concrete, not the loose gravel or leaves on the side. For small children's safety, I don't think we got any small ones, but definitely make sure you stay inside the handrails. Don't climb on it. We haven't installed our climbing rails yet. We don't have them, so make sure you use the handrails. You know what they're for? Hands. Yep, there you go. Stay behind your guide, remain with the group, stay on the paved and wooden trails. No food, drinks, gum, or tobacco products loose in the cave. That stuff kills our animals, so that's kind of important. Don't pick anything up. Don't pick anything up. And don't pick any, you know, I said that 3 times. Sometimes it's hard to not pick something up. You might see the coolest feather or shell or something. Make sure you leave it there because we want everybody else to see it too. Besides, you don't know if it's a buzzard feather or crow feather or songbird. It'd be good to leave it there. Don't leave anything behind. Reason for that, we don't want to make sure we don't leave any trash or anything behind. Now, if you drop something and it goes someplace where you can't go according to the rules, let me know and I'll either get it then or later. We'll make sure we keep everything clean. Let me know if you have any problems. All right, I'm gonna let you through this gap right here. We'll head on down to the wide spot down there in the shade, and that's where we'll start. The gift shop we was in was built in the late 50s, early 60s by a guy named Joseph Bolger. He bought the place, called it Civil War Cave, and he liked that part of our history, I reckon. That's all he talked about. Now we got 9,500 years worth of documented human history here on the property, so we'll cover a little of the Civil War, but we got a lot of other things to go over here too. I'm gonna get in front of you here. I'll step in front. We're gonna talk about that tree up there. Now that tree by the door we come out of is an Indian marker tree. Been over in that shape we think about 230 years ago, so that, well, that leads us to believe it was an Osage Indian. Not only do we believe that, but the Osage, they believe that as well. That's how they marked things when they lived here in the Ozarks. Now that tree is, well, backwards figure 4. It got bent over 90 degrees to the east, and, well, there's several things that could mean. There could have been something to the east, but, well, one conclusion that was drawn that it may have been how their Osage ancestors would mark a Wakan site. Wakan was their word for mystery. Their name for God was Wakanda, or the Great Mystery, so that tree could mean, well, our cave may have been a place where the Osage ancestors would come to talk to God. Now, we don't know any of that, but we've got the tree, and even if it's a freak of nature, we've got an illustration of what the Osage did, and we've learned a little bit about them along the way. Now, we asked them if they'd come and help us dedicate another tree. Age of that one, it's not going to be too long before a storm knocks it over, or maybe it'll die of a drought. Hopefully we'll get some rain this year. This dry weather's kind of getting to us. But anyway, if you look over there next to that pavilion, you'll see a tree bent over in the same shape, much smaller. A couple years ago, I did that to kind of alleviate our loss if this one ever falls down. And we asked the Osage if they'd come and dedicate that for us. Well, I didn't know it was going to be such a special event, but they agreed to come, and they were led by their chief, Jeffrey Standing Bear. Elders, leaders, linguists, historians, they all showed up here, and it rained that morning. You know what we did? We walked out there, stood around that tree for a couple hours, and they had a ceremony. One of the neatest things the first of them said was, we want to thank God for the rain, because that's what brings life. What a blessing to have rain on this day. You know what? Sometimes we look at things negative, and I always love when somebody points out the positive on things. But anyway, the chief, what he said was, this is important to our people, otherwise we wouldn't be here. He handed the ceremony over to Cameron Pratt and Everett Waller. They had a prayer ceremony, and Everett told their history. at least the oral history passed down through his family. He talked about how the Osage had met the Vikings. Apparently that oral history went all the way back to the East Coast. They came from the East. Now they talked about meeting the French, the English, the Spaniards. All them people was here. The Osage, they were never defeated in battle. He said never were they annihilated until, well, 90% of their population was killed by disease. Once that happened, the Ozarks, which had been their land for a long time, well, it left a void. The Osage wound up in Kansas. They sold their land in Kansas, bought their land in Oklahoma. They're the only tribe of Indians that bought their own land. So, what a special bunch of people. Optimists and always looking for opportunities, making the best of whatever they're handed. And neat to have that story told to us. And the reason he took the time to tell that, well, they dedicated that tree to the memory of their great grandparents. The last of the Osage that lived here, they wanted to dedicate to their memory. How neat to have that told by them that day. And, well, now we've got a little bit of a present looking to the future. And hopefully 230 years from now, somebody will think to call the Osage. Maybe they'll come and they'll talk about how their ancestors.
On a roller coaster.
That boy's got a big voice, doesn't he?
Yes.
But hopefully they'll have a dedication ceremony, and they'll dedicate that next tree to the memory of their great-grandparents who dedicated this one to their great-grandparents. It's very important to know where we come from. And the Osage, you know what, it's important to them too. And neat to have that link to our past. It's not been that long ago that the Ozarks was their land. All right, we'll head on down. Now, Smallin Cave's the cave we come to see, and Smallin doesn't describe it. It ain't small. It's anything but. Smallin was the name of the family wandered over here from Tennessee in 1852. Them, the Davises, the Stats, their cousins and in-laws, they wandered over here to the Ozarks at the frontier. They settled on the place, and that's why the cave's called Smallin Cave. Remember, Smallin doesn't describe it. It ain't small. Now, there's a small cave on the property, and it's right up here on the right, and we're going to step in there first. Now, once the Smallin settled on the place, it wasn't long the Civil War broke out, and, well, Wilson's Creek, a few miles west of here, was the site of the first major battle west of the Mississippi River. Second major battle, the whole Civil War, the first Union general was killed over there at the end of that day. Well, Will Davis kept a journal. He talked about going over there. What they found, them boys that lived on this place, when they rode over there, 2,500 casualties laying on our Ozark Hills. That was a bad day, and then it got worse. The Ozarks, well, things wound up leaving. Those that didn't died or got tougher, and the ones left behind probably wished they'd left before it was all over with. Missouri wound up being the third most fought over state in the Union. Per capita, there was more men from Missouri died than any other state, and we had a star on both flags. Anybody ever tells you Missouri was neutral, well, there's a lot of them old timers I knew would contest that. They said we weren't neutral. We got ripped to pieces out here. It was awful. Now, when you got tragedy like we had, martial law declared, I mean, it was just a disaster. And the only way you can tell about really bad things sometimes is to romanticize them. And, well, the Ozarks really got romanticized. Matter of fact, everybody wants to be us. The reason I know that's all you got to do is watch an old Western, a frontier movie, or a Civil War show, and guess who they romanticize? Folks from this area right here. This would include a list of folks running the neighborhood. A lot of them visited the cave, and, well, they just run around out here in this part of the woods during the war. You want the short list, the long list, or a medium?
It's up to you,
It's your
girl.
choice.
Hmm?
You're in charge.
Short, long, or medium?
The list.
You can give it some thought there. You want to do rock, paper, scissors and figure it out? Go ahead and say short, long, or medium.
Medium.
Okay, medium. She made a choice. I knew she would. All right. Bushwhackers, Jayhawkers, Redlegs, Carpetbaggers, Union Army, Confederate Army, Partisan Rangers, Union Regulators, Quantrill's Raiders, Bloody Bill Anderson, the James Boys, the Youngers, medium. I'll stop with Wild Bill Hickok. Obviously, everybody wants to be from the Ozarks because that's the characters they romanticize in all the old books and movies, and that's how I know everybody wants to be us. Now, if you like that part of our history, come see us in the fall. camp over there, we set that up just like Camp Brown, which was down the creek during the war. We serve our guests a meal of beans, cornbread, fried taters around the campfire, tell the story of the Civil War of Missouri. Then we go back and do a lantern tour of the cave. In 2 hours, we don't even come close to covering the local history. We just give folks an idea what it's like out here in the frontier during them awful years, and everybody figures out why they want to be us. Everybody wants to be from the Ozarks. This is my wife. I gotta get it. Hello. Well, tell her not to run. Just walk.
No, you know what, I got family there too, that's why I can pick that. Have you been to Arkansas? No, that's part of the Ozarks too. We've thought about having our own state here, kind of, and you know what, they never did really decide where our state line's supposed to be. There's still an argument about that today if you get to talking to some folks. Who do you reckon it's gonna be? You don't know? Now, where you all from?
We live in Battlefield.
Oh, very good.
They moved to Oregon.
Oregon. You know what? There's a lot of folks in the Ozarks moved to Oregon. You got blackberries out there because folks in the Ozarks packed them out there and planted them. You know
You got
that?
blackberries on your little farm, don't you?
Oh yeah, I'll bet
Out
you
by
did.
the road? Yeah.
Yeah. We carried a lot of other stuff out there. Saws, axes. There was a bunch of preserve boys went out
Just
there and
studied
cut
the
logs.
Oregon Trail.
Very good. That was a rough trip out there for a lot of those. I got family that's out there too. You ever been to Baker? If you go from Baker up into the mountain, there's a little town up there called Sumter. Matter of fact, I worked in a mine there for about a year. Gold mine. You seen the dredge out creek beds? There's dredge through there too.
You ever go mine? Not yet. Okay. Now, where you step in this little cave first? We've been talking about the Civil War and how the Smallins, when they lived here, everybody showed up, and everybody wants to be from the Ozarks. We proved it too, didn't we? With a medium list. She picked medium. The Ozarks, third most fought over state in the Union was Missouri. Per capita, there was more men from Missouri died than any other state. We had a star on both flags, so it got a little chaotic out here. Once the Union got control of Springfield up here, they built 4 forts, and there's a road went south across the Finley River just below the cave in the little village of Ozark. That was where Camp Brown was, and their job was to watch for the Southern boys coming up trying to take Springfield back. So, pretty important little camp, and at one time, there was over 6,000 Union troops camped there. Doesn't take long to figure out why we found so much trash left by them boys, does it? Our army, you know what, starting way back then, they started leaving stuff behind. Back then, it was usually pocket knives, pocket watches, mini balls. You know what, them bullets, we're leaving bullets all over the world still today. Our federal government, they should have got that and hand-drawn some lines in so nobody left all that behind, but we still do it now. You ready to go in this cave? Okay, here we go. Now, after the Civil War, the violence escalated here in the Ozarks. It never calmed down. Eventually, vigilantes took over. Local bunch was known as the Bald Knobbers. The first bunch of them met in Taney County on Snap Bald. Treeless Hilltop, that's where the Bald Knob name came from. Now, they got so far out of hand, it was the worst outbreak of vigilantism our nation ever saw, culminated right here in Christian County. They finally came and arrested 80 Bald Knobbers. They had 2 years worth of trials, 70 men convicted of crimes, 4 sentenced to hang, and the last 3 were hung on the square in Ozark in 1889. First big battle, Wilson's Creek west of here, that was 1861. That is a long period of violence, sir. So if anybody ever asks you how come all us folks in the Ozarks were a little odd, contrary, and suspicious outsiders, tell them just study our history. Makes perfect sense. And I guess that's why everybody wants to be us. Everybody wants to be from the Ozarks. Now, this cave goes on, but we're not. The amount of water comes out of it indicates it's really big, but it's still filled with clay back there. When the Smallins lived on the place, it was filled all the way to the ceiling. Once the Bald Knobbers was hung and the things calmed down in the 1890s, Fielding family wound up on the place, and that's who this cave was named after. They dug the clay out of the cave up to right here, down to where it is now, put a wooden box in the water, had a lid on top to keep animals out. And after they did that, well, Those three boards right there is what's left of the spring box, which was the neighborhood refrigerator for years. Now, oh, there's a salamander right there. A couple of them. One right there, one right there. Not very big. There's another in there. Those are blind cave salamanders, Ozark Grotto. Now, they're kind of special. They're born with eyes, gills, and skin color, and they all got that right now. They're not mature yet. As they mature, they'll lose their gills. The skin will grow over their eyes will eventually absorb completely into their body, they'll lose their skin color, and then they'll inhabit the darkest recesses of the cave. That is the only known species of animal in the world that adapts to darkness, but kind of fits our character here in the Ozarks. We've always had to adapt to our surroundings. Why not our salamanders too? That's the Ozark Blind Cave Salamander. Now the fielding's dug it out to here. Folks since then dug it out a little further, and we're the ones that went ahead and dug it out wider. And when we did, we found all kinds of trash in here. People always leave trash wherever they go. Top layers, a whole bunch of deer bones. Apparently that's pretty good hunters who ever lived in here. And mixed up with the bones was arrowheads, spear points, stone knives, little pieces of pottery, different things. Deeper layers, older stuff, and well, it's not uncommon to find buffalo bones and elk bones in the Ozarks. It's only been a couple hundred years ago they were wandering our hills. And we decided we better stop digging over here because it got really old. Dugout spot right there, that was big chunks of charcoal. And you can see the little chunks below that. That's all from an ancient fireplace. Now, according to archaeologists, paleontologists, and anthropologists, well, a lot of them believe it was about 9,500 years ago folks were living in this little cave. What that makes this cave? First home in the subdivision, so I like it. And I like to put it that way because when the pioneers showed up here in the Ozarks and built their villages, they all said they was in a new world. And it was new to them, but there was nothing new about it. Folks always kind of overlook. There's been folks living here in the Ozarks since the elephants were here. The mastodons and mammoths at the end of the last ice age. Matter of fact, around the corner there's a couple of bear dens. One of them fit this guy, and they still visit the cave from time to time. Black bears, they still live in the Ozarks. There's another bed behind it. It's really big, and it's suspected to be the bed of a short-faced bear. That, you know what? You know how big them things were? In caves all through the Ozarks, if you go in certain places, you'll find places where they slept in the cave, woke up, and you'll find claw marks 14 or 15 foot up on the walls where they were scratching, getting ready to go out and see about hunting again. There was also dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, American lions, and elephants, mastodons, and mammoths. Now, I know there was elephants in this neighborhood because in the big cave after floods, we find bones pretty frequently. Buffalo bones, elk bones, maybe a camel bone, one of them. We also found the tooth of a mastodon elephant. You know what that means? Elephant fell in a sinkhole, tumbled down in our cave, and you know what? Since we found his tooth after a flood, the rest of it's probably in there somewhere. So if you see any elephant parts, make sure you let me know. I'm looking for the rest of him, okay? All right. Let's go ahead and head out and go down there to the Y. I'll get in front of you just before the camp down there. All these cave formations at the front of this cave were green. You know what? Sunlight. Moss grew up in the layers. In the other cave, you're going to see green formations way on the back. Oh, a little bit of there. Where are you folks from? 1852. The cave's name at that time was Winoka. Found that name in the journal of a gentleman from New York, Henry Rowe Schoolcraft. He come out here to the Ozarks looking for lead. He was the son of a glassmaker, and well, the friend of his, Levi Pettibone, come out with him. He was the son of a lawyer. Now they came out here. Actually, he was the brother of the lawyer. Sorry, I get things mixed up sometimes. You ever do that? Not yet. Okay. Now, Schoolcraft and Pettibone, as they were walking through the Ozarks, well, they come out here looking for lead, but Schoolcraft got really distracted, I guess. He did find lead just north of here after he came to our cave, but as he come through the Ozarks, he wrote down everything he saw, and his journal was so complete, so detailed. Well, He wound up, got a job, got hired to go up and map the source of the Mississippi River, documented lots of wilderness up there, eventually married a Chippewa woman. He was an Indian agent at that time. She became the first published Native American author, and her writing and Schoolcraft's writing, and, well, you know what, there's a guy named Longfellow, probably used some of their material to write a story about Pocahontas. You ever hear of that? Yeah, kind of neat to know that. Now, he survived the trip through the Ozarks, and it gets really amazing when you know 2 days before he walked up this valley, he walked through 3 Osage villages. Survived the trip through their villages because the Osage weren't home. This was their hunting and gathering grounds. They always left this part of the country just before Christmas, would go to the bigger rivers and come back the following year. Because of that, Schoolcraft survived, and we know what the Ozarks looked like when the Osage were still here. Now this gentleman here is Soldat Duchesne. French name, you notice that. There's a lot of them names in the Ozarks because long before our first explorers showed up, French were here. Yep, them French, they were all over the Ozarks, hanging out with the Osage. Now, the Osage, Soldat Duchesne stood 7 foot tall. Not exceptional. 6.5 to 7 foot was not uncommon for an Osage warrior. The French, most of them guys were about that tall. Pretty important detail in my book. You know what? You got to wonder why them little runts were here. Well, some of them were trappers, some of them were traders, but a lot of them, they were missionaries. You got to have a reason to risk your life, and cash usually isn't that good an incentive. At least not in my book. But anyway, the Osage had a name for them little French guys. Did you know Europeans didn't bathe back then? Long hair, bushy beards. The Osage, they didn't look anything like that. Shaved all the hair on their head, except scalp lock on the back. Hair on their face was removed, including their eyebrows. Prided themselves on smelling good and being clean. That's how you could tell somebody was civilized in their world. Them little French guys showed up. They had a name for them. You know what they called them guys? The Stocking. Well, that's not exactly the right pronunciation. It's my